So I'm just gonna get right into it. If you're a Seahawks fan, you're probably not gonna love this video. But I mean, just look at your roster. Um, Listen, I think there's four position groups in the NFL right now that matter more than any other. It's quarterback, it's wide receiver, it's defensive line, and it's corner. If you want to say offensive line, sure, but I'm going to put that behind everything else because the Cincinnati Bengals just made the Super Bowl and almost won the Super Bowl with a very poor offensive line. So I'm not going to, I'm not going to put as much emphasis on the offensive line as some people probably would. And listen, of those four position groups, I think wide receiver and defensive line, Seattle has a lot of depth and they have some good talent at the top. LJ Collier and Darrell Taylor being your starting defensive ends is not great, but I think the addition of Uchenna Nwosu is going to kind of offset that. But quarterback, I mean, I don't really have to say much to explain to you that between Geno Smith, Drew Lock, and Jacob Eason, both their personal success and the team success that they have endured as starting quarterbacks, it hasn't been great. And the cornerback room was probably the worst position group of the team last year, and they had one of the worst cornerback rooms in the NFL last year already. And it somehow got worse. I think Sidney Jones as your starting cornerback, your number one corner, you're not set up for success. I think Ugo Amadi is a decent corner, but only in like a dime or nickel situation. Artie Burns, Justin Coleman, Ryan Neal, Trey Brown, John Reed. I mean, I don't really have to go on much further to explain that that's not a great cornerback room. And it's sad to see that in however many, it was 10 years that Seattle had Russell Wilson, and I'm just going to say it again. It's something I've said before. It's something I'm never going to sway from. Russell Wilson is the best player in Seattle Seahawks history. I don't care if you want to say Richard Sherman. I don't care if you want to say Marshawn Lynch. I don't care if you want to say anybody else, Steve Largent, whoever you want to say. If you're a Seahawks fan, this is exactly the situation that you were put in before you drafted Russell Wilson. You put the faith of your franchise in Matt Flynn. Matt Flynn. Before that, you have Tavares Jackson. You have Charlie Whitehurst, Clipboard Jesus. This is exactly the same outlook that you had before Russell Wilson. And now after Russell Wilson, I mean, it's Geno Smith, Drew Lock, and Jacob Eason. What are you going to do with those three guys? What are you going to do? I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to kind of keep this short and sweet. The Seahawks are not going to win double-digit games this year. They already were the only team last year in their division that not win double-digit games, and everybody in their division, I mean, they either stayed about the same or every team in their division kind of stayed the same. I'm not going to say that any of them got better or worse, really. Depending on the Trey Lance situation, maybe San Francisco gets better, and depending on what they do with Deebo Samuel. But all of those teams also had, something that made them better than Seattle. Kyler Murray in Arizona, while Russell Wilson was injured last year, Kyler Murray made Arizona better. Matthew Stafford made the LA Rams, along with Aaron Donald, along with Cooper Kupp, along with Odell Beckham Jr. Those guys made LA better than Seattle. It's a roster that when you look at it, just looking at it with a blind eye, I'm like, man, the best this team can do is maybe 6-11. Because who is going to elevate the guys around them? I don't know if DK Metcalf has taken that next step in his development to make everybody around him better. And it's very hard for wide receivers to do that in the first place. I don't know if Jamal Adams is good enough as a player in his own right to be able to say that he can make everybody around him better. I don't know if Jordan Brooks is a guy that can really step in as a replacement for Bobby Wagner. I don't know if the tight ends between Will Dissly and Noah Fant and Colby Parkinson are going to be able to say we can elevate that. Like, there's nobody on this team that can just make everybody better. And with that, like I said, 6-11 might be the best this team can do, but I could really see this team going 2-15 and being the number 1 pick in the draft next year. And it's something that they should be aiming for. I mean, it's something they should be aiming for because this team does not have talent. Their margins are really, really poor. Their depth, something that has made Seattle really good throughout the years, their depth is really bad. Their quarterback room is really bad. Their cornerback room is really bad. Their secondary in general. Quandre Diggs is a good player, but he's not coming back till probably halfway through the season this year. And even when he comes back, I don't know if he's going to be that great safety that he was last year. Jamal Adams has been a terrible coverage safety in his career. And, I wouldn't even say that he's a good... I'm not even going to get into it about Jamal Adams. But, I mean, I was pulling at strings to say that the defensive line is a good group. Their defensive ends are not good. It's really just the fact that their D tackles are... I'd honestly play... If I'm Seattle, I'm playing Poona Ford, Shelby Harris, Quentin Jefferson, and Al Woods as my defensive line. I'm not entertaining this LJ Collier thing any longer. I'm not entertaining this Darrell Taylor thing as more than a situational pass rusher. Uchenna Nwosu is a second, probably even third tier pass rusher. It's just it's a very bad roster. It's one of the worst rosters in the NFL. I would dare to say it's the worst roster in the NFL. And I get it. They invested in the offensive line this draft, but people are just going to act like an offensive line can be put together with 2 rookies on the outside and just be fixed. A lot of offensive line success comes from the quarterback. If the quarterback is going to be really bad, the offensive line is going to be put in the same category as really bad. Think back in your life as football fans. How many times have you ever said, oh, they have a really bad quarterback, but their offensive line looks great? You don't say that. That never gets said. So, yeah, at the end of the day, this team should be shooting for the number 1 pick. I mean, I don't think I'm alone in saying that, but I don't think even if they wanted to, I don't think this team could be much better than a top 10 draft pick team next year because their roster is really bad with their top end talent and with their depth. It's just not there. So, Seahawks fans, I'm sorry, but maybe don't trade the best player in your team's history before you start investing in the offensive line, which you should have been doing 7 years ago. And maybe don't improve. Well, I wouldn't even say they improved the defense other than Quentin Jefferson. Don't let the second best player in your team's history, Bobby Wagner, just walk out the door for nothing. So, yeah, 2-15 is honestly my prediction for this team. And I could see it getting as good as 6-11. But they shouldn't be doing 6-11. They should try to lose every single game next year. And like I said, even if they aren't trying, they probably have a good chance of losing every single game next year. And if this was any other team, I'd be, I wouldn't be happy saying that. But I think this is going to be a 2 to 3 year period where Seattle Seahawks fans have a chance to say, wow, we had it really good with Russell Wilson. Like, we had it great. We had it almost perfect with Russell Wilson. And that's when it's going to set in that, wow, we traded him for Shelby Harris, Drew Lock, and Noah Fant, and the draft pick that turned into Charles Cross. Good luck, Seahawks fans. It's going to be a long season.